What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the HypeCast, episode 5, your weekly gaming podcast with your boys, SnowBikeMike and Tom Bock. We are now back for this week, and we are ready to talk to you about all the things hype in the video game world. And Tom, this week, we got some good stuff to talk about. How you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, man. We had a great day yesterday, seeing all the great announcements out of PlayStation on State of Play and Inside Xbox, and there was a lot of stuff going on there to talk about. And man, we are slowly getting into the meat of the video game season, if you will, with all the big games coming out. Man, I gotta ask you a question before we get going. So we've had this conversation before about, game quality, or I should say game numbers, how many games you get to play versus the amount of time that you get to play that game by itself, right? So for example, in past years, like my MO was I wanted to see everything, right? In a previous podcast, we talked about easy mode and all that stuff, right? I want to see 20 games. I don't want to just see one game and play it for 100 hours. I'm starting to kind of change a little bit, man. I'm noticing myself putting more hours into things, like getting really deep into Borderlands, which I always have been deep into Borderlands, but like I'm putting even more time in. Same with Gears, which we're going to talk about. With all these games coming out, have you decided, like, do you want to see all the games, or do you want to just like pick a couple and like get real deep into those games?
You know, Tom, for me, it's an interesting one because I balance streaming the 5 nights out of the week. And so I have a really interesting balance as a variety streamer. I see myself having my hands in more pots, but less completion of the games, right? So I'll play 2 hours of one game, 10 hours of the next game, 5 hours of this game, hundreds of hours of multiplayer games. And I find myself a lot of games, but not much substance out of it. Not a lot of time to complete those games. So I'm playing a lot, and I'm seeing a lot, which is great and all. But at the same time, somebody asked me last week, how many games have I completed? And he stumped me. I was like, maybe one, maybe two. I've played like 100, but I don't remember how many games I've completed. So my nature of the beast is play a lot of them for probably a smaller amount of time than most.
I like it. It happens. And man, there's a lot coming out this little bit. It's nothing like 2020. Like 2020 is going to be this ridiculous year, which we'll talk about some of these games coming out. Like it's insane. I think this year, you could pick just a couple and kind of get pretty deep into them. But I don't know. There's still a lot coming out. There's a lot coming at you. And there's just not enough hours in the day when it really comes right down to it.
Well, it's funny that you brought that up, Tom, because we might be hitting the meaty part of the video game season, but guess what? It seems like gaming is now year-round after each and every year, and it looks like 2020 is going to be continuing that way in the spring. But we're going to jump right into it. Topic number 1 is a fun one. Ahead of PlayStation State of Play and Inside Xbox, our friend over at the NPD group, Matt Piscatella, actually put out top 10 lists for both consoles over this generation for best-selling games for all games category and exclusives. So we're going to jump right into those lists because it's really cool data. Big shout out to Matt Piscatella. If you're not following him on Twitter, he puts out some really cool, in-depth looks and numbers at certain video game worlds that you want to see. So over on the PlayStation 4 side, let's start on that. There's going to be 2 categories that I'm going to discuss right now. One called All Games and one called Exclusives. They're pretty self-explanatory, but of course All Games is going to include anything that could be on different consoles, could be anything in between. And then on the exclusive side, those are just the Sony first-party games that you can exclusively get on your PlayStation side. So let's take a look for All Games, your top 10 ranking, going from number 10 up to number 1. It's going to go Battlefield 1, NBA 2K18, God of War at number 8. Number 7 will be Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. Number 6, Marvel Spider-Man. Number 5, Call of Duty Black Ops 3. Number 4, Call of Duty Black Ops 4. Number 3, Call of Duty World War II. Number 2, Red Dead Redemption 2, my apologies. And number 1, Grand Theft Auto 5. Now for the exclusives on the PlayStation 4 side, in similar order, we'll go from 10 to 1. Up at the top for the exclusives at number 10, MLB 18 The Show. Number 9, MLB 19 The Show. Number 8, MLB 17 The Show. Number 7, Infamous Second Son. Number 6, Days Gone. Number 5, Bloodborne. Number 4, Uncharted 4, A Thief's End. Number 3, Horizon Zero Dawn. Number 2, God of War 2018. And number 1, Marvel's Spider-Man, being at the top of the PlayStation 4 exclusive list for top 10 best-selling games for this generation. Tom, I know I just threw a lot at you and the listeners. It's about 20 different games, and it's a whole lot coming out of those lists. What were some of your standouts, or what are some of the things that you notice on both of those lists?
My gosh, I mean, it's the strangest thing you and I always talk about is really the number one still being Grand Theft Auto 5. What was that, 2004 that game came out? Like, I don't even know anymore how old that game is to still, and I would bet you in this thing, the only thing that annoyed me about this list is I didn't get to see the actual numbers, because there are some really interesting things in here. The fact that, 2 PlayStation exclusives made it up into the top 10 of all the games. But I would bet you that the Grand Theft Auto 5 number is probably twice as big as the one in second place, which is Red Dead Redemption 2. I would seriously bet you it's probably twice as many units if they show the units. Tom.
It's amazing. Like you said, that game continuing to sell. It released in 2013. It was actually released on the generation before this. And so for it to come out, it to be sold on a second generation where most people had already played it before in the 360, for it to still have a thriving online community, add a first-person mode never to before seen in a Grand Theft Auto game mode. I mean, there's some really big things that keeps this thing churning, keeps this thing selling. And I think another one that you notice is Minecraft is actually not on this for all games on PlayStation or Xbox, I believe, which is very interesting to me. But Grand Theft Auto selling gangbusters, which is truly incredible, Tom.
Dude, it's insane. It really is insane. Like, who doesn't, if you don't own, I mean, shout out to Rockstar, obviously. They continue to come out with this amazing DLC stories and additional stuff. This game is so huge and there's so much there now. But if you haven't bought it yet, I mean, who are these people still buying this game? So anyway, I'll pivot off that one because we've talked about it before and it still blows my mind. But it also blows my mind, and maybe it shouldn't, is, 2 things about both these lists, and we're going to do the Xbox list. It's very genre specific, right? The games that sell these massive amounts of units kind of fit, and especially like in Xbox's case, in a couple real specific, genre types. But the fact that Call of Duty, I mean, we talk about how big Call of Duty is all the time. I mean, you and I forget sometimes, because sort of why I led with that question about, do you play a ton of quantity games or just one game for a whole bunch of hours? That's what these games are. I mean, there's people that call themselves gamers but probably only play Call of Duty. Like, they literally just play it or very little other genres outside of that. So the fact that, what does Call of Duty have, 1, 2, 3, 4 games on there, and then Battlefield, which is effectively kind of the same game in a lot of ways when it comes to genre, is really just kind of mind-boggling that there's that much strength of those games year after year. Remember, those are different developers too, so it's not like it's the same game. It's just the name stays the same, and then some of the parameters obviously are similar. But man, it doesn't matter what Call of Duty comes out, it's going to be in this top 5 forever. It's just the way it goes.
Agreed, Tom. It's incredible to see how they sell year after year. Now looking at it as a generation, where they place in the top 10, and those are mainstays there. I would almost go as far to say as well, when you look at this all games list for PS4 and similar to Xbox, which we'll talk about in a little bit, 7 out of those 10 games, in my mind, I would consider a shooting genre, right? Grand Theft Auto 5 and Red Dead Redemption, you could go back and forth with me, but some of the main mechanics in that game are shooting. Sure. And it's incredible to see 7 out of those 10 games are really based around a shooting mechanic, a shooting game. And wow, look at that. I mean, Marvel Spider-Man to crack that. NBA 2K18 seems very odd to me. I don't know how that got in the list, but odd that 7 out of the 10 are really strictly shooting games. I wonder if that's what we're seeing more in the game development world, of like, clearly shooters sell, we got to make a lot more shooters, or why there isn't more disparity in this all list on the PlayStation side.
Well, it's the competitive stuff too, and if you look at the ones, I know we haven't talked about it, but you get sports games and racing games, which are also very competitive-y in nature, right? But there's another one that shocked me that it wasn't on here, because you mentioned NBA 2K, and we'll go to the exclusives here in a minute, but the one that shocked me that wasn't on here, and I know this isn't worldwide sales, and I think this is distinctly because it's US is FIFA, right? Like, I would think even in the US that FIFA would make this list, just because of the nature of what FIFA is and what it represents for an annualized thing, or even Madden. Like, I'm a little surprised that Madden is not on the list either, if I'm being honest, because at least I have always believed the sports games, and maybe it's just more seasonal when those do, and they don't stay there through the course of a whole year the way these other games do. but I was a little surprised not to see but just the one sports game on there. For the top 10, there's obviously more when you talk about the exclusives, but that kind of jumped out at me as well. But dude, anything named Call of Duty is gold. Like, it just is going to sell, and it just kind of blows my mind that that's the you could have that many in there at the same, for the all-time games. That's pretty amazing.
Incredible. Let's jump over to the exclusive list now, Tom, and it's going to be really fun to see how very similar our conversation is about all games on Xbox and how different our conversation will be for Xbox and Sony on the exclusives realm. And this isn't going to become a surprise to a lot of people out there. We've always known that Sony has dominated Xbox in the exclusive worlds with some of their IPs and titles over this generation, but we will start to see a change as Xbox continues to buy up studios, tries to make a bigger portfolio for their exclusives. But right now, when we look at the US-only sales for exclusives during the PS4 generation, I mean, Marvel Spider-Man, wow, to be number one over some of these big mainstays. I mean, you saw Uncharted 4. Uncharted is so tied to PlayStation in my mind. I'm blown away that Marvel Spider-Man would be up there, but I think it hit right at the right moment. It was the zeitgeist. It was filled in a role when Batman hadn't been on sale for quite some time. It was the end of that Batman Arkham series kind of cycle, and we'd been hungry for a game like that. And to see Spider-Man topping the list is really quite something special there.
I agree, man. And it's the other thing too, and I think you're right about the timing of it. I mean, it was kind of the height of the superhero and the movie side and everything. And so people had been hungry for that genre, as great as Uncharted and the entire series has been. But think about this, man. And this really is the massive difference between these two consoles at this point and how this thing has gone. So think of those top 6 games, right? Spider-Man, God of War, Horizon, Uncharted, Bloodborne, and Days Gone. And then I'll even put Infamous in that. So you go through, what is that? The top 7 games, there is zero similarity between those 7 games. Those 7 games are completely unique into and onto themselves. They couldn't be more different. Bloodborne could be no more different than Days Gone, could be no more different than Horizon Zero Dawn. There's hardly any that are even kind of the same in that one, which really does, kudos to Sony, kudos to PlayStation, the fact that they were able to do what they did. And if you think about, and we haven't talked the Xbox list yet, but I don't know if you caught this little nugget out of this thing, the all-time games, or the all games, not just the exclusives, there's 2 exclusives in that list. Spider-Man and God of War are in that list. Xbox doesn't have that. There's not a single game of their top 10 that made its way up into that top of the exclusive top 10 into the overall top 10, which is, again, this is the story of this console generation. It is exactly what made this the way it was. And I often think about, and you and I often talk about, what would this console generation have been had it not been for these 6 games? These 7 games led them to selling, what are they, 100 million plus PlayStation 4s now globally, whatever it is. Let's say those games hadn't been very good. Like, what would this thing look like if Spider-Man was just like one of the other Spider-Man games that came out 10 years ago that was like, it's okay. I just always wonder what this would have been like had they not just done amazing stuff with their exclusives.
No doubt about that, Tom. A nice catch on that little gem right there. We'll definitely talk about that on the Xbox side, but that's fun that you point that out, that 2 of those cracked that top 10 and none on the Xbox side. A big one, of course, you got to give a big congratulations to Cory Barlog and the team from Sony Santa Monica to change up God of War, the game that, hack and slash, repetitive, overly violent and mature, into this game that was so story driven, one cut, no cuts in between the game, and really change up the whole narration and kind of thought process on God of War. To have that up at number 2, I mean, that was a big accomplishment. And I also want to touch on number 6, Days Gone. This is a game that came out to a whole lot of big, mixed bag reviews, from good to bad to ugly. People saying the game doesn't start till 20 hours in. People being so up and down on this. For that game to be number 6, I'm surprised on that one.
Me too. And, it's funny that you bring that one up, because that was the game this last year that that changed me from, I've got to play a little bit of every game. I would try to buy and download everything I could. I'd play it for 2 hours and I'd never come back to it again. It was Days Gone that got me to change that, at least here recently, which is, if I would have quit that game 5 hours in, 8 hours in, I would have literally missed out on one of the best games that I've played this year. Completely would have missed it because I didn't enjoy it, if I'm being quite honest, through the first 5 hours. And I think of all the other games that I've done that with, like Fallout 76 or Anthem, where it's like I quit them really early. I didn't put much time into them. And I kind of got in my head like, man, I need to give these games more of a chance. I need to spend more time with them. I need to see what the developers had in mind. Because if I didn't do that here, have you played much of Days Gone?
No, I'm one of those guys that I probably put
Okay.
5 to 10 hours in, then just dropped it, kept it moving.
Man, I don't even know what it was about it that kept me going because, to be quite honest, the beginning of it, man, it was full of like these weird audio bugs and glitches and like, you know, you get that weird thing in games like where you're having a conversation and the ambient noises in the background, you just happen to walk into a different area and the voices are like talking over each other. And there was like all these, it just seemed like such an unfinished, unpolished game to me at that time. And for some reason, I just kind of stuck with it. And then once I hit that, like you said, and whether it's the 20-hour mark or somewhere around there, man, that last 20 hours of that game was some of the most special I've had of any game this past year. So again, shout out to Sony for pulling this off. And I pray for their longevity that the next set of games, and certainly we'll talk Last of Us here in a little bit as we get into State of Play, but they've a little bit put themselves in a position like they have to keep doing this. And it's not to say that they have a crappy console or but they haven't invested as much in that whole ecosystem. They've relied on, let's have these great first party games. That's what's going to sell units for us. That's been their MO. They better keep doing that. Like that better be a thing that whether it's Ghost of Tsushima or Death Stranding or certainly The Last of Us. But man, they've made this bed now that they kind of have to lay in, right? And they have to keep banging out these bangers of these first-party games because look at this. I mean, they've been killing the game.
It'll be interesting, Tom. You know, that's a good take, and I'm almost on the opposite side of like, do they have to? Kind of yes and no, right? Like I think they've gotten all the eyes in the 100+ million units sold, banking off of killer exclusives. But now I start to think of like the casual gamer or the person who's now figured out of like, I'm going to get good exclusives no matter what. But really, now this is my ecosystem, right? Now as we head into the next generation, a lot of those 100 million units, those people are like, man, here's my friend base. Here's the UI. Here's the controller that I've, now come to love. I think I'm going to continue on that. So I don't know if Sony has to, really ensure and make their bed that it has to be perfect first-party games that will help sell extra units. But now it's like, how do we keep those same people in that ecosystem, right? And like Microsoft, as we've seen, they're going to start to sell services, talk about what kind of features they can give you that are just as good, and hopefully try to sell you on their exclusives too as they grow that portfolio. But I wonder if PlayStation really has that feeling of like, we got to ensure this is perfect, or how do we keep this player base that we have trusting in our ecosystem to come back? Because I'm sure a lot of people, those sales numbers, like you said, only 2 out of that top 10 all games list are really first party, right? So like, what does that look like? If this is your trusted ecosystem, will you come back to it? But
I didn't think about it. You're right, dude. Before you go on, I think you're totally right. I hadn't even thought about it from that standpoint. But if you did see from last generation, as much as PS3 was behind Xbox, people did flip. I mean, they absolutely flipped because of the exclusive games being so much better than what they were. But you are right about one thing. Look, the battle lines have been drawn. People that are in that ecosystem are, when it comes to third-party stuff, everybody has a place that they prefer to play them on for exactly those reasons that you had said. For me, at least this last generation, my multiplayer or my third party have been on Xbox for one giant reason that I keep always talking about, which is I love backwards compatibility, and I love knowing that these games that I've invested this time into are going to still be there the next generation and the generation after, and the hardware becomes less and less important. But that's the only reason, right? Like, and friends too, right? But I don't have any love for one or the other. But I think you're right. Once you get hooked in, that was their goal, and they did it, man. They did it in spades, and I think they're going to continue to leverage that.
No doubt. I think one fun part to putting up too on the opposite side of like, for me, right, I am a ingrained Xbox guy. I love Xbox. I'll always play all my games on Xbox. But Sony coming out with incredible first-party exclusives makes me buy that extra console that I really didn't need, right? In the long run, 8 out of the 10 all games list could be playable anywhere. So if Sony didn't have that, a lot of exclusive games, some banger of exclusive games, I wouldn't have bought that extra PS4 that I really didn't need when I'm playing all the games on a different console that I prefer, So definitely two sides to that coin. But let's jump over to Xbox. My favorite box over there. Let's jump into the top 10 list for all games and exclusives, starting with all games at number 10, Destiny 2. At number 9, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. Number 8, Star Wars Battlefront 2015. Number 7, Battlefield 1. Number 6, Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. Number 5, Red Dead Redemption 2. Number 4, Call of Duty Black Ops 4. Number 3, Call of Duty Black Ops 3. Number 2, Call of Duty World War 2. And number 1, Grand Theft Auto 5. For their exclusives, going from 10 to 1. At number 10, State of Decay 2. At number 9, Forza Motorsport 7. Number 8, Forza Motorsport 6. Number 7, Sea of Thieves. Number 6, Forza Motorsports 5. Number 5, Forza Horizon 4. Number 4, Gears of War 4. Number 3, Forza Horizon 3. Number 2, Halo Master Chief Collection. And number 1, Halo 5 Guardians. So, Tom, there are some interesting names that kind of enter into these two top 10 lists. Of course, a big one for me to circle up is Destiny 2, right? So that one's interesting for me because you had a lot of the exclusives over on the PlayStation side, whether it be weapons or timed exclusives. So very odd to see Destiny 2 top this list, Red Dead Redemption to come down to number 5. Of course, Grand Theft Auto still being number 1. But, man, those Call of Duties just continue to get up higher. Star Wars Battlefront 15, where did that come from? But some amazing stuff and a lot of shooters in this list. I think every single one of those would be considered a shooter in my mind.
The entire list. Dude, the entire thing. There is no variety in those games. There is not one thing up there that is not based on a shooting mechanic, which is, I don't know, man. Like, as someone who's, not the oldest gamer out there, but is definitely older than most gamers out there, I always fight that stereotype, right? That as an adult, and a fully grown-ass man, that these games are still rooted in, something that's very samey, and that if you went and asked a non-video game person, that's what they would bring up. They would bring up Call of Duty or shooters or that kind of stuff. And so it does kind of bug me that there's nothing else, because there's so many great experiences out there that have nothing to do with shooting. I don't know. I'd have to go look through the top 10 list. We did the top 10 podcast to see if my top 10, what's not a shooter, because there's a bunch of ones in there that are not. And it is a little painful to see that, though. But, man, I mean, look at that bottom list, though, for a second, bud. Look at this. So you've got Forza, Gears, and Halo. When Phil Spencer saw this, when he took over, I don't know how many years Phil Spencer's been doing the job, but a lot of these kind of predate Phil Spencer, his head had to have exploded. That literally it's these same 3 titles, Halo, Forza, and Gears, that made up so much of their exclusive list that there was nothing else there. And I would bet you, and maybe I'm crazy, and maybe Sea of Thieves sold way more units than you and I know it did, and maybe State of Decay is, but there can't be a big volume behind those 2 games. I mean, they may be number 6 and number 10 respectively, but there wasn't a lot of units of either one of those 2 games sold, not compared to Sony's list that had 7 wildly unique exclusives. All of the Xbox ones are kind of the same. They're the same 3 games, but just the different, version of it.
Yeah, you can definitely tell how big their portfolio is, right? When you see the same Forza, Halo, and, Gears, those are their big mainstays that we've always talked about. And Phil Spencer and the team now acquiring more studios is hoping to grow that number, right? But the interesting one for me is, like, when we think about the services that you brought up that bring you to Xbox or really help the players first, when we talk about Xbox and Xbox Game Pass, State of Decay 2 and Sea of Thieves are mainstays on that. Those are where I got those games. So those break the top 10 list no matter how many big numbers they are. But very interesting to see those 2 games that were straight up released day 1 on Game Pass, those make the top 10 list. No matter how weak your first-party games are, how do those 2 make it? Very interesting stuff. It'd be different if we saw the numbers and how many thousands, but, man, 2 games out of that Game Pass selection that released day of, very interesting to me.
I think that's my point is, they didn't sell a lot of copies of those, right? So their list is kind of a radically different look of their exclusives, not just in the variety, but in the numbers, man. I don't think I'd want to see that number. Like, how many copies of, I don't know, what's the 5th game? Forza Motorsport 5. How much did that sell versus Bloodborne? I would bet you Bloodborne sold 10 times as many.
Oh,
right? Their number 5 game sold 10 times as many as Xbox's number 5 game.
Insane. But those were fun stuff right there. Like I said,
Really
go
interesting.
follow
Super
Matt
interesting.
Piscatella, part of the NPD group. They give you these monthly numbers, giving us the generation breakdown for US only, please, mind you, was really cool to see. I think it was fun, and it ties into what we're going to finish the show off with Inside Xbox and State of Play from PlayStation, and we're ending the generation. So that was a fun topic. Really enjoyed talking it over with you, Tom. But right now, while we're in the middle of our show, let's talk about some of the games that we've been playing. And you and I have decided we're going to talk about one game that we both have been playing, and we actually are having totally different experiences with, which I'm really excited to touch on, and that is Gears 5. They've dropped the Gears of War. Remember that. It's just Gears 5 now is what they're calling it. But, Tom,
I didn't
big
even know that.
Xbox mainstay, a first-party game, a game that is day and date with Xbox Game Pass. It's also on PC. It has crossplay, has a lot of features from the single-player to multiplayer modes. I want to know, what are some of your thoughts on one of the biggest Xbox releases this year and this generation of Xbox?
Boy, I sent a few tweets out about this. I really do think this is kind of the coalition at the top of their game as far as what, and I've played all the Gears. I've never really been big in the multiplayer side. I know there's other people that kind of play it exclusively for multiplayer, but most of my experiences with Gears have been single player. I've played every single one of them for sure, 100%, and a little bit of horde mode and some stuff like that. I've never gotten deep in multiplayer. But as far as all the things that make Gears Gears, because it really is a unique experience of a game, right? The controls are a little different. Things don't move as fluidly as most third-person sort of action games. It's its own very unique subset of a game where, you know, like a reload mechanic becomes such a big part of the game and stuff like that. This game, dude, if you would have asked me going in, like, what's the best Gears can be? Like, what is the most they can do with that? I would have never envisioned this. I honestly wouldn't have. And what I mean by that is the quality of the set pieces, like I've talked about a bunch, just the visual fidelity of this game, the environmental storytelling of this game, like most of the levels, and I'm speaking of multiplayer, single player exclusively, you walk into a level that's as big as a football stadium, and you get to see all these different pieces of, you know, what happened here before. You can kind of piece together a little bit of the lore of the history. I know the Kind of Funny guys and Tim Geddes talked a lot about sort of, which amazes me that some people have never played a Gears game before. Like, this could be your jumping off point for a Gears game, which is amazing. Just shows how maybe people didn't play a lot of the Xbox stuff. But man, not to mention, and this is the part we need to talk about, is the challenge. Oh my God, the single player, if you play on a hard enough difficulty, that game has you on your toes. Like, every second, every move you make, you better not screw up. You better pick the right weapon. You better make the right shot, pick the right cover, or your life is over in a very violent way. So high level, this is by far the best Gears game. There's not even a close second. Like, it's 10 times better than whatever your next closest. To me, it's Gears 3. It's 10 times better than that. And I foresee myself playing a lot of this game in horde mode. I know we'll talk about some of those other modes in a minute, but I love this game. Love it.
Oh, Tom, like you said, if you could point to any Gears game and say, what is the best Gears experience? What's the epitome of what Gears of War is? You would point directly at Gears 5 because it is everything and beyond. And also, if you remember last week's episode, we talked about what game would you play in super easy baby mode. We're going to talk about in my experience. I am currently playing it in super baby easy mode. I don't have the difficulty set to it, but what my experience is, I'm literally playing Gears of War 5 or Gears 5 in super easy baby mode. But let's talk about the single player in just a moment. I do want to touch on the multiplayer. I know you haven't dove much into it, but I really want to sell how great of an experience Gears 5 is and how it is a must download, right? So you not only have an incredible single player, you have an incredible extras menu where you can hear the full story of the lore from Gears 1 all the way to Gears 5. You have a previously on for just Gears 4 in-depth story mode, which is truly incredible. Like you said, people coming in, this might be your first Gears. If you watch those two in the extra mode, you could be fully caught up with the story, right? It wouldn't be, I've played every moment and I know everything, but you would have such a good base knowledge that you would feel confident going into this game, which I think they did a great job on and they should be applauded for. Then when we move over to the multiplayer side, Gears 5, like Tom brought up, multiplayer has always been a mainstay in Gears, and it's been a very different, highly competitive level of multiplayer that turns a lot of people off, right? From wall bouncing, active reloads, the punishment of not choosing the right weapon or not being quick enough on the sticks to aim at people with your Gnasher. They've taken that and said, hey, we're going to give you this highly competitive mode, but we're also going to give you a lot of other fun modes that you and your friends can play that will at least get you away from that if you're not ready for that type of gameplay, right? They have arcade mode within multiplayer, which gives you different guns, makes you choose out different classes per character, which is really exciting and adds a little fun level to that multiplayer of PvP. They give you a whole lot of options with Horde mode and the new escape mode, and they even have your own builder mode. I forget what that's called. I always think of Halo Forge, but something like that where you can build your own levels out. And they give you so much meat.
Constructor, I think.
Constructor, yeah. They give you so much meat in those 3 different genres of multiplayer where you and your friends can really get lost and play a lot of added time that's not just the single player. So I really want to sell people on those modes because I love them, right? I've done Horde mode all the way up to level 50. I've done escape mode so many times now I can't even count because I love it that much, and they're so unique to what that PvP and PvE could be. But then there's the single player, which I know, Tom, you have dove into a lot. You are playing on the super hard difficulty. I am having a totally different experience. So I'd rather have you start before I tell what has happened to me in my situation.
By the way, when you told me the other day, you and I talked just on the phone, and you were telling me this story is so funny of how this, because I didn't even know this was a thing. So it's going to be interesting for you to kind of tell everybody what's going on. But the yeah, man, it is punishingly difficult, and it is the thing that I really dig about it because, you know, we talk about game balance all the time and sort of the incredibly complicated tasks that developers have to make a game hard enough to give you some kind of a sense of a sense of, you know, completion when you finally get there. But then they have to cater to all these different play styles, all different levels of skill. And then in this game, you have to mix in all the different levels of what weapons did you have? And is one going to be completely overpowered by another? You know, you've got your, you know, sort of robot companion that can do all the different stuff. He can flash, he can freeze, he can do this stuff. And so trying to find a balance of all these different tools you have at your disposal, they absolutely nailed this. And I sent a tweet out the other day about, like, I don't know that I've ever seen a better set piece. I mean, there's a lot of games that have great set piece designs. One of them, Uncharted, we talked about, you know, in the last thing, that just is a genius level. They lay out these big environments, big sprawling environments, and then and you know, you have all these different ways to approach it. I don't know that I've ever seen a game quite like this one when it comes to that, because I've gone back and played some of these, like the scenes over again. Man, every single time they play out differently depending on what was my loadout, how did the battle go, and some of the, without spoiling the game, just the absolute, I've never done it before in a game. There's a, and again, it may be a little spoilery, but set piece where you got to shoot out the ice underneath a bunch of enemies that'll fall through it. There's some later in the game in these big, crazy wind-swept environments where, you know, your bullet trajectory, your grenade trajectory gets affected by these massive, you know, hurricane force winds, or you get caught in them and blown into a spot you didn't want to be otherwise. Like, this is a game that if you wanted to, and I wish they would do this almost in a funny way, is like, just do like a remix of these big set pieces. Give me 10 of them in a row and let me go. And because it never plays out the same ever, which is really weird for a single player game that is kind of, you know, singularly focused. Like, it's not exactly point A to point B, but the amount of variety in the campaign is just stellar. And again, really difficult. Like, I'm probably 30 hours in and I'm just at the very tail end because I keep having to redo certain boss fights and stuff over and over and over and over and over because it's really hard.
Oh, I love it, Tom.
So tell your story. Your story is way better than
story,
mine.
But to meet in the middle, right, the set pieces are incredible. This game is beautiful. When you watch cutscenes, if you're watching them in 4K or even on just a normal 1080p TV, this looks like it's a movie. It looks like it's real life. It looks that good, and it's really fun to see the new story, right? We're kind of in that second game, the middle act of this new generation of Gears of War characters that we're now meeting. We're kind of phasing out the old, entering in the new with their own backstories, really fleshing them out as characters. And I really love that we're continuing this new generation, but we still have some ties to the past, especially in this game. You get a lot of great callbacks to some people that you know and love from the Gears franchise, which they've done a terrific job. But I, unfortunately, like Tom, am actually having a totally different situation. I want to preface this right now. I think Gears 5 is the best Gears I've ever played, I've ever seen. I love it a lot. And I think the story is incredible. But I'm going to tell you something that will probably go against everything I'm trying to say here. So I just want to state that I think this game is awesome. And if you play unlike me, you're going to have a great time. So if you know Gears of War, if you know the franchise, they've always had an incredible co-op campaign, whether it be couch co-op way back in the day, whether it be online with 4 of your best friends and everybody taking their own character, going through diverging paths and all meeting up at certain moments to share epic battles, but everybody sharing the experience. And we've kind of teetered away from that 4-person. Last Gears of War 4 was just 2 people co-op campaign, but this year they decided to make a 3-person co-op campaign, which you would think, oh cool, we're all going to play this game together. Unfortunately, out of the 3 people, one of you has to become the trusty sidekick robot. And now you're probably saying to yourself, oh, SnowBikeMike, that doesn't sound so bad. I get to be a robot. No, you're not the Terminator that they've teased before. You are a flying helper support bot that does not get to shoot, doesn't get to kill things. You are the door opener. You can grab ammo. You can zap enemies and eventually kill them, yes. But that's not the Gears of War experience that you just paid dollars for or put on your Game Pass subscription, right? Like, you're there to Lancer a locust in half. You're there to shoot an active reload. If you are playing as the robot, yes, you can tell me, oh, Mike, they have cool support abilities like flash or stun grenade. They can give active camo or shields. They can even zap people to death. No, that doesn't count. Okay, don't even come at me and say that's near the experience that we've come to know and love. I understand I can kill somebody with a zapper. It's not the same experience, and it's not as fun. Don't even try that with me, But it was very interesting to see that they gave an option to have a 3-person game, and the whole first 2 acts is nonstop. Here's 4 players on the screen. Here's 6 players on the screen. Here's 3 players on the screen. But still, that 3rd person has to be limited to play as the robot. It's unacceptable and totally not okay. And yes, you can say the flip side of the coin, which I'll agree with, right? We talked about it last week, the super easy baby mode, which essentially is what I'm playing in Gears, right? I could hand my girlfriend, I could hand my mother, I could hand Tom Bock's wife this controller and say, hey, follow me around, enjoy the set pieces, enjoy the story, and you don't really have to do much besides open up a door occasionally. But that's really not the players that you're going to get jumping into Gears 5. There's no way somebody looks at their mother and says, hey, you want to play Gears 5 with me? I got this great backseat game you could do. Nobody would ever do that. Very unfortunate situation for me. And so I have now been stuck, and I have great friends who will say, no, Mike, I'll be the robot. But we've invested so much time. We've come so far that I'm the freaking robot now.
You're the robot.
And I have these great moments, like we talked about with Super Baby Easy Mode, where I'm literally doing nothing, but my friends are doing the most intense battle sequence you could ever see, and I might as well have my feet up and my hands in a tub of popcorn, because I am doing nothing. Enemies will not shoot at me unless I'm in their face. I could sit back and watch the whole time and be ineffective. I sometimes will laugh. I took a screenshot, which my friends got really upset at me at. We're at this beautiful set piece. We're fighting this mega boss, and all I can do is grab ammunition and guns if I want to. And so I start to make this giant stack of ammunition and guns. I mean, there easily had to be 10 different items stacked in this circle, right? And so me just laughing as they're like dying. They're like, Mike, do something, help us. I'm just go around the map. I'm putting things in the middle, laughing. And I decide to take a screenshot to sum up my experience as the helper bot. There's a giant circle of weapons in the middle of this incredible boss fight. And the best is I take the screenshot, which then unfortunately pauses the video game for everybody, right? And the moment we unpause, they both die. They start yelling at me. I'm laughing. And it just makes this experience so unworthwhile to me, so upsetting, where it's like, now I either have to kick one of my best friends. It reminds me of Apex Legends when we've gone from 4-player battle royales to only 3, and it's like, oh, there goes your 4th player friend, you know what I mean? Like, now here I am of like, I have to kick one of my friends so I can be one of the main characters so we can play, instead of somebody having to experience the robot. So That was my fun rant and experience. I still think Gears 5 is incredible, and I will preach it from the rooftops. But I will also say, Coalition, I don't agree with the third player be the robot. I think that was truly the wrong move, no matter how you want to spin it for beginner or friends that don't really want to play or be a part of it. Gears is an experience, is being Marcus, is being Dom, is being Coltrane, cutting people in half, doing awesome things. Being a robot is totally unacceptable and not okay in this series as a third person riding along with the campaign.
Man, it's such a weird design choice, and I hate to laugh because I can just see like you're making a mini game out of dropping ammunition in the middle of the battlefield because there's nothing else to do. It's such a weird design choice, dude. There's no question. But the one thing that you told me that you didn't bring up that's even crazier to me, and I know that games have struggled with this. You know, I think we're not going to talk Borderlands today, but they do a great job of letting people at vastly different levels play together. And I'm trying to think, I think it was Monster Hunter most recently that had some really huge issues with different people at different points in their own story and what they saw. But you also mentioned to me that, and again, without spoiling the story, one of the characters has a lot of cutscenes, let's say, and things going on that if you're not playing as that character, you don't even know that that person is having anything going on. So all of a sudden on their screen, they're getting a 5-minute cutscene, and you and the other idiot are just standing there like, "What's up, dude? Why don't you come join us?" And it's like, wait, I'm seeing a whole different thing. So talk about that.
You know, I totally forgot to bring that up, Tom, and that is a fun one, and it can go both ways, right? It gives you the mystery and the intrigue of hearing Tom all of a sudden mid-battle going, I'm having a premonition or I'm seeing something, my guy won't move, right? Now me and Slappy over here like, oh, what does it look like? Describe it to us, right? And that adds a fun level of like, now he's trying to paint a picture of a locust eating Market Phoenix's head. That's not a spoiler. That's just, I made that up, right? And so, like, it's fun to be like, oh my God, that really happened? That's crazy. Because he could say anything to us and I would believe it, right? Like, I would just believe that. But on the flip side, now I'm missing that experience, right? Like, now the gameplay goes from, we're in a boss battle and one of my friends goes, oh snap, I can't move. I'm having a flashback. And we're like, A, I can't see it, so that sucks. I'm missing out on this story. And B, move your butt, because if you die, we have to restart this boss battle that's taken us 20 minutes. So it's like, give me that. And there's some things here from what my friends have described to me that would be really cool to see on screen instead of what the generic setting is that I'm currently seeing. It's not like it's tied in mainly to gameplay. It's like we're missing out on something that would really make for the better experience of the campaign, which is unfortunate, or the story.
It's just, and again, man, maybe the design challenges around this are way more complicated than I think they are. And like, what are you going to show people if there is a cutscene and you're, you know, there's all these different things you have to sort of think about because you don't know who's playing together and all that kind of stuff. But it is a very weird one to think about. You have a whole different experience and you're missing a big chunk of the story because you may never go back and play that part of the story again because you've already kind of been through it. But all these things aside, I know we're kind of bitching about a few of the odds and ends. The gameplay of this, just the minute-to-minute gameplay, there are some pacing issues for sure that I will say a little bit throw me. You're not quite there yet, Mike. You got a little further to go, but it does get a little weird in places as far as like the, you know, when it's action versus a little bit of slow time. And that's always a hard thing with games like this. They're trying to make it long and you can't just have crap thrown at you 24/7. But man, again, I'll go back to the sort of the dynamic design of these set pieces. There are moments in this game, there's 3 that I'm thinking of in particular, 2 of which you're going to come to soon, that I've never seen them in a game before. They're absolute genius level game design elements that affect these set pieces so dramatically that years from now, I will remember them because they're that memorable, which is saying a lot for a Gears game because I can't begin to tell you what happened in some of the past Gears games. It just was more of the same. This is not that. And I'm really happy for the Coalition. Look, I'm happy for Microsoft here. We all talked about they need for Games Pass to really be what we think it can be, for it to completely end up in this, you know, it's really worth it financially. And the list we just covered, they need some great big first-party games, even if they're called Gears and even if they're called Halo. They need some fantastic wins like this. And this game is that. There is no doubt of that top 10 that they put up. This would be number 1 to me of all the exclusives they've released in the it's better than Halo Guardians to me. I mean, I think so. So anyway.
No doubt about that, Tom. It's incredible, and it's a special one. It's a must-play if you have Xbox. And the best part about having Xbox in these first-party studio games that we always talk about is Xbox Game Pass. You got to have it. It's well worth it. You can play it on PC. You can play it on Xbox. It's so awesome to have, and it's a must-play game. But let's round this podcast out with our final topic, which is a fun one. We've had an incredible week, Tom. We just talked about the top 10 games for both Xbox and PlayStation with Matt Pescatella coming out with that. We just talked about our Gears 5 experience. But this week, we've had Batman Day, which has led to an insane Batman teaser from WB Montreal that people thought all of a sudden we're getting a new Batman game, to Sony State of Play and Inside Xbox. And both of those were really fun, right? State of Play, this is episode 3. They're finding their footing. They're finding their groove in these quick 20-minute, hey, here's everything you need to know about for the upcoming PlayStation releases that we really want to highlight. And then over to Xbox side, where this is their staple marquee show that they bring out to you with Major Nelson and the team. And they say, hey, we're going to give you an hour-long show all about Xbox. We're going to promote some of the games. We're going to talk with some of our developers at different studios. And we want you to know the message of both of these consoles and what we're coming with on this platform. And these might be, some of the final shows before our next generation of consoles. So you're really getting some of the last information that you are for what we have right now. But Inside Xbox, State of Play, what were some of your big takeaways from both?
It's so funny to watch. You and I were talking earlier, just the run up to these events, because we do live in the bubble with our friends and people that follow this stuff every day. And so you just get, everybody wants this, giant get hype moments out of everything, whether it's a 5-minute thing or a 1-hour thing. It's like, everybody's like, oh, son, get hype. Like, and again, I get the irony, as we talked about. I know the title of our podcast is called the HypeCast, so I'm sort of going against that. But they were both perfectly fine events. If I step back and I watch them both again, and I had some weird, as I was watching them, I was like, man, it seems like there should be more in the Sony one. It felt a little short on content, and the Xbox one felt a little bit too much exposition in places. So I was but at the end of the day, Mike, look. They did exactly what they set out to do. They were both perfectly well done, fine events. The reality is, at this point in these life cycles, and we said it at the start and we said it again a minute ago, no one's opinions are going to change of this stuff at this point, right? The people are dug in on the one, if they are a fanboy of one or the other, they're long since dug in on it. And it kind of wouldn't have mattered what they came out and did, either one of them. If you're a PlayStation guy or gal, you were going to slurp all over what they did and defend it to the ends of the earth, and the same with Xbox on the other side. The truth is, if you're just being objective, they were both fine. They were great events. You got to see a little bit of games, and who doesn't appreciate seeing more of that? And then, of course, PlayStation had the banger moment with Last of Us 2, which, kind of is so huge and so overwhelming, which we can talk about in a minute. But man, at the end of the day, they were both fine events, and we got some good information. Excuse me, spitting. It was fine. They were both good. They were good. They can both be good. Not one has to be better than the other. They can both be good, and they were.
Agreed, Tom. I had a lot of fun with both of them and really enjoyed them. I really like how PlayStation is finding their rhythm with, State of Play. Episode 3 seemed to be really good. They show me games that I never would have seen before, right? They started off with Humanity. They move in a couple trailers later to this Watam game that I've never seen before, that I would never get into. Yeah. But all of a sudden they got a cute toilet with a piece of poop flying down the bottom of it, a giant nose, these things that I'm like, what is this? And then all of a sudden they give you a Call of Duty deep dive into the campaign.
Cool. And
you're like, this looks great. This is why I'm buying this game. We talked about it last episode with PAX West and us playing Medieval and them saying, hey, there's a demo now. You get exclusive loot. That's what I want to see. We're a month away from that game. That's the type of announcements that I want, right? We're a month away. Here's a quick trailer. Demo's out tomorrow. Go play it, right? I love that. I'm all about that. And then, of course, showing the Death Stranding Limited Edition PS4 Pro. Whoo! That see-through gold controller is hot, wow. Tom. I'm telling you, I like that
even without a baby in the controller. I want a baby in the controller.
And then, of course, finishing it off, we heard a lot of rumor the week before, right? There was a media event set on the same day by Naughty Dog for The Last of Us Part 2. They invited people from around the globe to play actual 2 hours of The Last of Us Part 2 that people are now open to talk about starting today, which is Thursday, September 26th, Outbreak Day for all of you Last of Us fans out there. But then that kind of got the speculation of like, oh snap, are we going to get this? And 2 days before, Naughty Dog said, yes, it will be at State of Play. And we got an incredible trailer all about Ellie, all about the world we're going to see. One of your favorite characters returned, of course, Joel. Everybody got hyped up about. And then the release date of February 21st, 2020. This made for such an incredible State of Play. No matter what you thought the beginning was, that ending was so hype, so incredible that you don't even remember the beginning parts if I didn't just tell you that. That was the only part people would remember.
Yeah, I agree with you. There was one game you didn't mention called, or two, Arise, I thought looked really interesting. And what about that After Party game? I'll skip. That looked, I do like Oxenfree. That was a really interesting, we talked about, sort of the Sayonara Wild Hearts on the last podcast and how unique of an experience. That After Party looks like a completely weird, wild affair. Like, that thing looks insane. But man, I got a weird comment to make about Last of Us because I went back to see, I think when we did a podcast 2 years ago talking about our top 10 favorite games of all time, literally of all time. And I think Last of Us was either my second or third. I can't remember. It was right at the very top, right? So I'm a giant Last of Us fan. And this weird thought dawned on me because I saw Neil Druckmann saying, they've been working on this game as we, talk about for so many years, 5 years, whatever it's been, huge amount of time they've spent. And it feels like, and I don't know if this is just this, I don't want to, again, be this get hype moment guy, but this game, and we just found out today that there's not going to be a multiplayer, so that's a weird little twist we can talk about some other day. But this may be the kind of all the years of video gaming, and stick with me on this, bro, because it's going to be a weird thought, but of all the years of video gaming that we've witnessed when it came to storytelling, gameplay, and then, motion capture, and then putting real emotion into that, characters you care about, all of these things blended together, there is a chance, and now they're saying it's like the longest game they've ever made, which is saying a lot, right? Because they've had some pretty long games before. This may, in a weird way, be like, I'll use the term most evolved game ever. This is kind of like where the industry this may be the pinnacle of where the industry's been leading, as weird of a thought as that is, for all of these years of all these different elements coming together into one. And this game may be that special. I don't want to get so hyped because I haven't played it and I haven't seen it and all that kind of stuff. But just what we know of The Last of Us already, what we know of the quality of the acting, what we know of the quality of all of it. Dude, this could be like one of those just off the, incredibly, again, evolved video games where this whole industry's kind of been leading. Everyone's adults now. Like, how old's Neil Druckmann? In his 40s? Like, the people making these games are like grown adults now. I don't know, man. I'm so excited for this game. Like, I couldn't possibly wait for February to get here, as much as I don't want to get another year older or 6 months older. I wish I could snap my fingers and have it be February 21st of 2020.
I think a big one for me, Tom, I agree, is the release date, right? I mean, no matter what the story was, we knew this was going to be great. Like you just brought up, all the pieces leading up to this. This game is going to be incredible, if and or but. But really the biggest one for me was the release date, knowing now that we don't have to wait till PS5. Knowing now this isn't going to be in November or the year after that when it will definitely be in another console generation. This is this February. Spring continues to pile up with more and more games. You better get out of the way in February at the end of that one. But to know and take a breath of, a sigh of relief to say, yes, this game is coming out. I know it's not the calendar year, but like this year for us now, right? We can look forward. It's only a couple of months away and just say, yes, this is going to be here. I get to finally experience this. I am so pumped up and so excited about that one. And that was, of course, the star of the show for PlayStation. Like you talked about, After Party is going to be a big one to circle. Arise looked great. They had a couple of stuff in the middle that it was fun. On the flip side, Xbox continues to start selling those incredible services, right? Tom, right now, if you have an Android device, whether it be a pad or a phone, you can sign up for the Project X Cloud beta and start to play what Phil Spencer, Larry Herb, and the whole team over at Xbox has been playing for a couple of months now with this Project X Cloud, and that got me so hyped, but also so sad, Tom, because I don't have any Android devices.
I know it is weird, and this is such an interesting. I mean, between Stadia and between all these other things. I mean, I don't know what the timing is. It obviously is tied to kind of ubiquitous internet access across the country of high speed, whatever those things are. But this is the future of gaming. This is what gaming will be. There is no question that the days of caring about what console you have, and it doesn't matter. I mean, it's I live this world every day in my job with cloud services that all these companies I work with and compete with provide. It's not about the device. No one cares about the hardware itself. It's about the content that you can have. And at some point, all of these games are going to run in a cloud data center. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see who can kind of get there and how this works. Sony bought Gaikai years ago, but Microsoft's putting a lot of money into this, and it is exciting to kind of see what this future holds. I hate the fact that it's going to be held back by something as straightforward. Like you and I talked about at PAX, you couldn't even get a damn signal in PAX. Like, how far are we really away from being able to have the type of connectivity, and the speeds to go do all these different things that are out there still? It could be way further away than you and I think it is. But Microsoft has invested so heavily in this vision, and I think it's the right vision. It's just a matter of what the timing of it is, right?
Oh, it's so exciting, Tom, because especially this fall into winter, we're going to see Google Stadia release with their Founders Pack and much more. And people are going to be playing this beta. So we're going to really have the forefront and the kind of wider spread. Hey, everybody's doing it no matter where they are in the world. And they're going to really tell you if this is make or break, if they can and can't. And both services are going to have that kind of test, which is really cool, right? I'm all about that. And I'm so excited to see where we go. And man, if Microsoft can find a happy medium of bundling that in with your Xbox Ultimate, with the Live and the Game Pass and the shared service on your PC plus xCloud, this will be a really cool service to have that, like you talked about or at the beginning of the episode, changing the tides and getting more people to get on board with this, which will be awesome, right? I cannot wait. Another cool one coming out of that I really liked at Inside Xbox, they had 2 deep dives with the devs doing dev diaries about Atlas, which I want to touch on for a moment, and of course, Outer Worlds, which is one of their now first-party games. It's going to be released everywhere, but it is under Obsidian, which is owned by Microsoft now, and they had some great deep dives into both of those games. Of course, Atlas was shown a couple years back, has been on PC. That is the massive pirate game online, just like Sea of Thieves, but imagine even more people, even bigger monsters, even bigger world. And for this to be coming to Xbox in Xbox Game Preview got me really excited, right? I love Sea of Thieves. I want to see Sea of Thieves on a massive scale. Here's Atlas. I thought that was really cool. Any thoughts on Atlas at all?
I think the first thing that caught me, and I think that Jeff Rubenstein made a kind of funny joke about it, like, oh, another pirate game, right? But I was a little bit struck by, and maybe it's just thematically with pirates, there's just not the common ground is the common ground. I was a little bit struck by how much Sea of Thievesy it was, if there's such a word as Sea of Thievesy. It just seemed like there was a shot of one of like the Kraken coming down, and all I could think about was that same exact thing happening in Sea of Thieves. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know at the end of the day. If it's done well, it'll be fantastic, and it's like you said, it has a bit of a lineage and some time already. So there's nothing, again, it seems fine to me. It looked exciting, and I think anytime you can have a game that's fun with your friends to do something that's not shooting like we just talked about, that's a little bit more world building-y, and something that's, hey, put me in a different position that's not a real world thing. Like, you and I are never going to be pirates, bro. Like, I hate to tell you now, like, that's not in our future. I love stuff like that. I love being able to get outside of my normal thing and go do it. I was excited to see it. It just was a weird choice to show at this thing because it's so samey as Sea of Thieves. But I thought it was, again, the time they spent on it was great. And it looked fantastic, by the way. It looked really good.
Yeah, it looks really cool, and it's from the people who made Ark Survival Evolved, and as you know, if you've been watching my live streams, my Twitter account, I've been telling you that I loved Ark Survival Evolved, and we're coming into it years after its release, kind of hitting its main legs and really figuring out what that game is. To have that big of an open world, have as many friends as you want, running through this jungle with different dinosaurs trying to eat your face. I can only imagine how cool the pirate version of this is going to be. So I was sold on that one. And then, of course, the big one coming out of Obsidian, Outer Worlds got the deep dive where they showed you combat, weapons, the different worlds you're going to explore, what you're going to see, what kind of story it was going to be, was really something special and really kind of made Inside Xbox that much more better. And that's one thing. I mean, that's next month. That's the end of October. I cannot wait for this game. It looks just like Fallout New Vegas, but with the outer world feel where you're in the universe, has a bunch of weapons, has the VAT system, has that kind of, communication and dialogue system that I know and love and trust from that game that I fell in love with so many years ago.
God, I love, and I loved, I'm a sucker for kind of art style, the way that they just, that they spent a lot of time on that amount of content that they covered, whether that was 10 minutes of the show, whatever it was, just trying to make it funny, trying to make it witty, trying to really establish like the rule. I mean, in a funny way, it kind of reminded me of Borderlands, if I'm being really honest. Like, and I don't know, the thing that makes Borderlands so funny to me, and it was just the other day I was doing something and listening to like the quality of the voice acting. I'm not trying to go too far in a tangent here, but if you read it written, it's really not that funny. It's just kind of some words on a page, but the way it's delivered and how great like Chris Hardwick is and the one he does, or whoever the, voice actors are, they just breathe such life into the dialogue that it becomes this whole different thing. Their timing is good. Their delivery is good. The Outer Worlds has a lot of that going on in it. Like when they were showing like the campiness of the world and the different stuff, like I think it's going to be that kind of a game. I'm excited for this game, dude. Like I mean, that's like one of your jams, man. New Vegas is like so up your alley. I have really high hopes for this game. I hope I'm not let down. I'm not a big hype guy. I don't get all crazy before I see a game. I have very high hopes for this game, and I hope it delivers because it really does seem a spot in the gaming ecosystem that's just kind of missing right now that this game can really fill if it's good.
Oh, I'm so excited, Tom. I cannot wait. And I think, like we said, having that kind of more deep dive, in-depth look, because we haven't seen much of it, right? We know about it. No. We know it's coming out sooner than later. But to be able to say, like, oh, this is what it really looks like, that sold it a lot. So I think all in all for Inside Xbox, there was some smaller games. There was some talk about Project xCloud. Those were the two mainstays that they talked about with Atlas and Outer Worlds. But all in all, that was an incredible Tuesday, right? We did not see Batman, so the hype for Batman quickly came to a halt. I had told my friends beforehand, and I'm sure Tom knew too, I felt like Batman was more of a bigger announcement, right? That should be on the Game Awards stage out in December. They'll dim the lights right in the middle of their award show. WB Montreal will come up and they'll show that game, which I think that's where we'll see this Batman, no matter what it is coming from them. But of course, I think all in all, Tuesday was an incredible day for gamers. No matter where you fall in the spectrum, you had fun, you got announcements, you got to see the messages coming out from both of these big players in the game industry, and there's no better way to connect with each other than having an afternoon all about video games.
I couldn't agree more, man. And you think about, we talked about the expense of a PAX or the expense of an E3 for the average person to try to go to and all that. Nintendo does their tree houses and they have their own kind of thing to them, but I hope that this continues to be something that they get value out of doing, because it is a great way for them to give you information and to share things with you. And that I hope, and look, I'm not trying to be, ride these people that criticize these things. Everybody's entitled to their opinions on these things. But it really does bother me to watch so many people tear these things apart and just be like, oh, they didn't do this or they didn't do that. It's like, I don't know. Part of me is like, man, be happy for what they are doing, and they're never going to hit a home run. And not everything has to be on volume 300. Not everything's going to be a get hype moment. There can be just okay stuff out there. And to me, I'm good with that. I would love it if they would do a state of play once a month and just like, hey, here's what's new. Here's what's going on. I don't have to critique everything to the millionth degree and be like, oh, they didn't show me whatever and get all butthurt that they didn't. It's like, I was happy with both of them. Were there things I wish I'd seen more of the Ghost of Tsushima game from PlayStation? That would have been cool. They didn't show that. I wanted to see more the game that I'm like literally losing my mind over is the next From Software game, the Elden Ring game. Like I would have liked to have seen that. That wasn't necessarily exclusive to either one or whatever, or like a Bloodborne 2. I had all kinds of things I could have dreamed up in my head, or what Rocksteady's working on. But it's fine. It's okay. Not everything's got to be get hype, and I was really good with it. And it really was a good day for everybody just to get a little taste of kind of what both these companies are up to. And dude, remember, when I close here, this may be the end. I mean, very quickly, every one of these pressers is going to be about hardware for both of them, right? And it's weird that they're going to time out again at the same time and talk about the fanboyism that's going to come out. Can you imagine when they both start talking about their individual console ideas and everybody's just going to be at each other's throats? I hope that the volume of that stuff goes down. But when you get into January next year, that's all we're going to be talking about is consoles out of both of them. So this is like the end of this era of this type of a event where they're just talking about games, if you know what I mean.
No doubt we're going to hit the pause button on all the fun about software, and we're going to really start to nail down on hardware pricing. You know, you're either going to know it or you're not going to know what terafloppies are, and you're just going to kind of smile and nod, you know? So it's going to be a different messaging for the next year. But Tom, you said it best, right? Here on the HypeCast, I try to spread the message. I know Tom spreads the message. I know all of you out there know the message. We always tell you, be good to one another, be safe, and have fun out there no matter where you are. So thank you all so much for tuning in to episode 5 of the HypeCast. I've been one of your hosts, SnowBikeMike, and I've been joined with the illustrious Tom Bock. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Of course, we'll be back on the next week's episode. You can find us at SnowBikeMike and at Galunga on Twitter. Go hit that subscribe button at youtube.com/SnowBikeMike Game. You can find us if you want more with the SnowBikeMike Hype Report on podcast services found around the globe and on twitch.tv/SnowBikeMike. Thank you so much for listening and watching. We'll see you next week, gamers.
Peace, peace.